Assalamu alaikum everyone. I hope all of you are doing well. So in this video, I will be explaining about Matthew Arnold and his literary criticism. So let's start. So Matthew Arnold was born in Laleham, a village in the valley of Thames in 1822. At 6, Arnold was moved to Rigby School where his father, Dr. Thomas Arnold, had become headmaster. There he was directly exposed to the powerful force of his father's mind and character. After fitting for the university at Winchester and at Rugby, he entered Balliol College, Oxford, where he was distinguished by winning prizes in poetry and by general excellence in the classics. More than any other poet, Arnold reflects the spirit of his university. So Arnold was an English poet and cultural critic who worked as an inspector of school. He was a social and literary critic. He set by a great values towards poet and also towards critic. Victorian age influenced on his writing. In his life, he was influenced by a number of people, especially his parents. At Oxford University, he spent time in reading or studying history, literature and philosophy. His friend Arthur Hugh influenced him about viscosity of poetry and language. He believed that good poetry is absent in England. He was also influenced by romantics, including William Wordsworth and John Keats. Arnold talked about aristocracy, whom he called barbarianism. Arnold also talked about journal populace. He believed that aristocracy what seems to be a law unto themselves, whereas commercial middle class did not value the good ideas and the good beliefs, and emphasizing individualism. The journal populace too lack refinement and taste. In view of conditions prevailing in that time period, he felt that society was moving towards anarchy because religion was losing its place. Matthew Arnold was representative of age. He wrote both theoretical and practical works as well. So the function of criticism according to Matthew Arnold include the function of criticism is to create a current of fresh ideas or noble ideas. One of the things that is lacking in his age, he believed that was new ideas or innovative ideas. So the task of the critic is to fill that gaps. The second thing is the criticism must be a good judgment based on reality. You should not make judgment on likes or dislikes. The third function is to bring out the true meaning of a text. The fourth function is criticism must be exercise of curiosity. The fifth function is business of criticism is no find fault. The sixth function is that criticism has the power to make the best ideas to prevail. The seventh function is that criticism must be disinterested. While the second last function is, it is the function of criticism to keep a man from self-satisfaction, which is retarding and vulgarizing. So the last function of criticism is to be able to see the object as it is. So some of the characteristics according to Matthew Arnold include Matthew Arnold's critique on commented on the cultural and social issues, religious issues and educational issues as well. He was the first person to pose a question within the context of the modern industrial society. As a humanist, he believes that a man in industries or industrial society is reduced to mechanized existence and is leading a fractured life spiritually and morally. So the first characteristic according to him is he critiqued obsession of his society with utilitarianism and reason. The second characteristic is he showed contempt for scientific temper of his age. He condemned that scientific approach lead us towards society to mechanize life. The third characteristic is his main concern was that people should live satisfied life or fulfilled life. The last characteristic is he focuses on the interiority of life, that is inner purpose and soul of something, and condemns the exteriority of bourgeois existence. A society that, example is that bourgeois is the society that show class tension. He was against that capitalism and materialism, and he thinks that it is only poetry to nullify the exteriority of society. So some of the salient features of his essay, A Study of Poetry, include this essay was not written for professional but for middle class reader with interest in poetry. It contains some of the best pronouncement about poetry. Arnold elevated the status of poetry over science, religion, theology and philosophy, because he thinks that according to Arnold, religion is dogmatic because it fails to address fundamental issues facing men, since its status is threatened by science in the Victorian era. Religion always sets some boundaries for you. You just believe that what is always taught to us by religion. We do not use our own common sense. According to Matthew Arnold, he said that is why poetry is superior to religion. The second thing is science. Arnold also criticized science, as science is falsely portrayed as the only arbiter of knowledge. Science is also fake, according to Matthew Arnold. And the third is philosophy. Arnold said that philosophy is also dogmatic. It is incapable of providing moral and spiritual sustenance to man, since it is grappling with certain unresolved questions and problems. Philosophy is also fake because both religion and philosophy failed to answer some fundamental questions. Poetry is at one side and other discipline is at another side. So that is why he considered poetry superior to science, religion, theology and philosophy. So according to him, there is a lot of importance of poetry as well. He expresses his views on the nature, function and character of poetry to a great extent in his essay, A Study of Poetry. The first importance is the ideas presented in poetry is infallible, reliable and sound. And there is a poetic truth and poetic beauty in the poetry. According to him, the best poetry is a criticism of life. By poetic truth, he meant representation of life in a true way. By poetic beauty, he meant the manner and the style of poetry. He said that poet should be a man with enormous experience. His intellect should be highly developed by means of enormous reading and deep critical thinking. The second importance is that only poetry offers emotional and spiritual source to man. The third importance, according to him, is poetry is reliable method of interpret life, because mostly the subject of poetry is human. The fourth importance is it should maintain higher status than other discipline. The fifth importance is that it should be judged by strict parameter than other subjects. The sixth importance is the function of poetry is to entertain man, so only the best poetry should be created. The second last point is readers should read the poem carefully to know the caliber of poet. The last point is, or the importance is, the subject matter must be serious and excellent action and grand style must be taken by the critic or the writer. So in this way, Matthew Arnold also talk about that what to judge in the criticism by the critic. The poem is good or bad. First of all, you see that what is good and bad. Identify when the work falls short of in terms of language and meaning. Do negative and positive both criticism to identify the good literature. View the poetic object as it really is by avoiding historical and personal fallacies. Now, what is historical fallacy and personal fallacy? Historical fallacy is the fallacious estimate that deals with the poet of past. When we are affected by a poet's historical background, we may easily consider his poetry of more importance than in reality it is. Occurs when poet is swept by the reputation of artist. While the personal fallacy include personal liking or circumstances, due to our personal liking, we give more importance to that poetry which does not deserve that much importance. So that is called personal fallacy. Now, what is touchstone method that he mentioned in his essay is that to find which poetry is the best, Matthew Arnold suggests a method known as touchstone method. This method was introduced in his work, The Study of Poetry. So the purpose of his methods include that first of all you select some best line from well-known poetry, then compare it with other poets, then define and evaluate it with different measurements and pass the judgment in the end. So he quoted Homer in his Will is our peace, and then he quoted from Shakespeare, if thou didst ever held me in thy heart, and then he quoted from Milton, and the courage never to submit or yield, and what is else not to be overcome. These lines may be differed, but there is one thing common in them, the very highest poetic quality. these few lines can guide us properly to judge our own and other poem properly. So he basically quote in that touchstone method in order to pass the judgment. He take Shakespeare, Homer and Milton in order to prove that method. So honored theory of poetry include that poetry of the highest order requires serious action and action sufficiently serious and weighty. And poetry, all art, is dedicated to joy, and this joy results from magnification or magnificence of action. High tragedy gives joy, according to Matthew Arnold. The best subject for the poetry are the ones that impart highest pleasure. Poet must choose characters that always please. So expressions cannot take place of action, according to Matthew Arnold. An expression is dependent for its effectiveness on the excellence of action. He considered ancient the admirable treatise of Aristotle as suitable guide or model. He does not regard Shakespeare as the safe guide, as he has excellence of subject, but he is unable to say a thing plainly. So that is why he rejects Shakespeare and he is in favor of Aristotle. Now the grand style of poetry. Now what is the grand style of poetry that he mentioned in his essay is that nobility of soul. For great words issue only for great minds. The second thing is, in this grand style of poetry, the subject or action chosen must be serious enough. The third thing is that the treatment must be severe and simple. The fourth thing is, in this grand style, that stylist must be poetically gifted. So these are the four styles that poet need to understand before writing poetry. So these are the grand style of poetry. So whatever he mentioned in his essay, study of poetry, is characteristic of poetry, its function of poetry, grand style of poetry, and some other feature as we discussed previously. So that's all from my side. If you have any queries, you can ask me in the comment section. Please like, subscribe and share my channel. Thank you for watching.